join internationally acclaimed overland expert Paul Marsh and award-winning journalist Gregory Simpson as they delve into all things responsible overlanding. From choosing the right vehicle, getting yourself prepared, getting your vehicle prepared, safety tips, and much, much more. Only on Responsible Overlanding.
It's actually very interesting because I've spoken to a lot of people over the last couple of months, and I've had good times, some amazing conversations, because people are sitting at home where they are able to connect. They've got more time on their hands, and I'm finding that people are taking stock of what they want to do, where they want to go. There is that frustration. We all want to get out into the bush. We all want to go and explore. I've had a lot of people who were supposed to be right now on trips. People who actually had taken good time out, and it's cost them a lot of money. You know, we had a rally that was going to go right around Southern Africa, a mix of classic cars and four-wheel drives. And the cars came out to South Africa, but the participants couldn't. So I think there is that frustration, but I think we've just got to embrace it and not lose sight of hope. You know, I think that the big thing, people can grab onto fear. For me, fear's something that we don't want to stare in the face. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't give us any value. But hope does. You know, the way nature's improving, which is quite interesting to see how it's improving. The time that we're not in nature is giving the time for animals to come back out, to almost reclaim their part without being interrupted. There's nothing worse than going into a game park, and as much as we all want to see the wildlife, there's 10 vehicles around a pride of lines, and as you move out, someone else moves in. You know, I just wouldn't want to feel like that myself. So I do think that nature's taking that breather that it needs, and there's certainly nature's coming closer, and it's coming. People are seeing animals and sightings they probably haven't seen in a long time. The beauty is going to be to get back out into nature with all the people that haven't been traveling. That great time when we can get back out there is going to be pretty unique.
So the first people to get back out there are really going to have the lion's share.
Well, I think they will. I think, you know, nature responds and picks up and heals very quickly, and that's what we've got to realize, that, you know, give it that chance. You think of how little emissions have gone into the atmosphere. Think of what that's done to the earth, to the air, the rain that's falling that's so much cleaner. You know, the animals are absolutely responding in a big way, and I think we're going to see that shift in time to come, and that's great. You know, they can breed more in peace. They're not being harassed as much. There's less of us invading their space, and I think that having that respect for space and being in lockdown, we're having to respect our own space personally in our lives, and how does that look? And being forced to do something is quite daunting, actually. It's quite scary. But once you get into it, actually it's not so bad. You know, we've all had to embrace and make changes and accept that change is going to be a part of our life. And change is not a bad thing. When people are going to go on expedition, it's a big change in their lives. You know, they're taking a norm that they've lived in a very comfortable surrounding, that they've built up a lifestyle that they're very comfortable living with, and suddenly they're making this massive change. They're going to get into a vehicle and they're going to live in this vehicle, which is not too far from being locked down in COVID-19, except you can drive around more. But essentially you're together with one another. And for a lot of couples, I think that was pretty daunting. And I know when clients are planning on big expeditions, that's also a scary point. You know, what will we talk about for a year long? People ask me that, you know. How am I going to get on with this person that I'm married to for 24/7, 7 days a week, on months on end? And that does become a lot easier when you get into it, and you realize that actually the fear vanishes. The ability to cope steps in. And that's what if COVID-19 has taught us a lot, has taught us how we cope with ourselves, how we need to embrace change. It's not perfect. We don't have the answers. But I think people are still very keen to get out and go and travel. I've certainly found a massive amount of people not losing sight of their dreams. In fact, more people are planning their dreams because they've got the time to.
So in some ways, COVID-19 is a perfect preparation for that trip into the wild with your missus for 2 months.
I think, it is. It really is. And I've seen by the number of people that I've connected with around the world that everyone's got their story, everyone's got their challenges. But as I said, don't lose sight of hope. And for those people who have a dream, or who are creating a dream, or finding their dream, that's the hope they're living with. The hope, and part of that hope in my industry has been, we can prepare for this dream. We are going to do it. It's just a matter of when. And I think that's beautiful, because you need to take time to prepare for something like this. And when COVID was forced on all of us with lockdown, we didn't really have time to prepare. It was kind of forced on you, and you dealt with it. And I think if you go overlanding and you have the time to prepare, you embrace it much better. You feel more confident. You can tackle challenges in a much better way. And I think that is very much more important when you're going to be remote and you're going to take time out from what your normal, comfortable day-to-day routine is. You want to be confident.
And wouldn't the desert be the perfect place for social distancing around the Victor's felt?
I think we could all agree that those who were locked down in remote places have got it made. I've got some friends, and they travel a lot, and they're living on a game farm right now. And I think
their probably life hasn't changed that much.
Well, I think they've absolutely missed the connection with people, for sure. What they've really found exciting is that they've managed to see game in a different way. So suddenly they're now forced to stay in one place for 2 months, which they wouldn't normally do. Normally they would be traveling, as a lot of people do. You travel and you move around. Now suddenly you're in one place, one game place, where you actually have access to the game all day if you want to. And now they're noticing habits of animals. So for people who don't take time to go and study the habits of animals, like those who make documentaries and give us the pleasure of watching, we take a brief glimpse in the life of an animal when we come past, and we see it for a moment, a minute, a month, and a few hours. And that's all we get of that person or that animal's life. Now you actually take time to really look deeper into what's happening. And of course, they're noticing what happens with the animals, and that becomes even deeper, that they can enjoy it and they can actually learn from it. So it's just showing that if we take time out and we actually immerse ourselves into something properly, we can get good value. And quite often our lives are distracted. They're full of distraction, and we have a measured amount of energy every day that we wake up with, that we have, that belongs to us. And we choose mindfully, or we don't, on how we're going to share that energy and what we're going to do with that energy. And I think the philosophy of what I learn over time and what I continue to experience is how do I want to live my life being the best version of me? And when I'm sharing my time and energy with people, that I'm giving it in the way that I want to share it, with purpose and meaning, and absolutely, I don't want to regret giving the time that I'm not going to get back, because it's too precious to me.
And living in the moment is a key recipe for a good life. How did you learn that? And did some of the sticky situations you've been in bring you closer to living in the moment?
It's an evolution. I think it's something I've learned through absolute experience, hard-learned experience, being forced to deal with certain circumstances where you have to focus your energy. Most of us don't know how to focus. I follow a great inspiration, a guy called Dandapani, and he talks well about focusing your energy. And I think when you focus your energy on something, you get an incredible experience. Now, quite often when people are going to go out in the bush, you take themselves out of their day-to-day life, which is full of distraction. So you've got work, you've got shopping, you've got phones, you've got all the different things that can take your time, your energy, and your focus. Okay? So when you move out of that and you move to a more remote place, like you're going to go in your vehicle into the bush, you're simplifying your life. You're removing a lot of those distractions. So when you remove those distractions, you can be more focused. So when you sit down around a campfire and you're having a conversation with your wife or your partner, you can actually really give them your time and energy, because you haven't got a phone ringing, you haven't got someone drawing your energy. So that in itself gives you a more meaningful experience. And I think, that has certainly over my life has taught me, and I have a wonderful wife who shares so much with me, and how we live our life mindfully. And it's not, nothing's perfect, but we're very mindful on when we started COVID-19 and we sat down between us and we said, what are we going to do during this time that's going to make our time count? How are we going to spend it? You know, we have a choice. We could sit and watch TV all day, sleep in late, but actually we put a good routine in place so we could look back and say we really made good use of this time. And we're doing some studying, we're doing some research, we're filming now like we're filming, but that's because we were able to, you know, now interact. But for before the lockdown, it was really difficult. You know, with level 5, we couldn't interact with anyone, and if you're by yourself, it's much harder. So people traveling by themselves, effectively in the bush, it's a very similar experience. You know, you're going from place to place, but you're still by yourself. So it's an experience. So that's why Scotty, he's just swallowed some water or something.
And in terms of taking the silver lining from the cloud, it's similar to overlanding, where an obstacle comes in your way, you can look at it, you can get negative or you can get busy making a solution.
Choice. Yeah, I like that. I think it's a great analogy. You know, COVID-19, we've had choices to make. You know, and I think being negative takes you down one path. And in the moment when you look at something and you go, I have a choice to make right now. You know, when I get up out of bed in the morning, I have a choice to make. When I come across a situation where I get stuck and bogged down, I can deal with it in a number of ways, and the outcome's going to be reflected in how I choose to deal with it. So, you know, you can look at something which is really a bad scenario, and quite often, if you get stuck, it can be. You know. So if you take that approach and you say, well, if I actually look at this approach now, how best can I deal with this? Maybe it's just taking a step back for a few minutes and just deciding how you're going to do it, as opposed to rushing in and making decisions without much thought or planning.
Fear-based decisions.
Fear-based, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. So, you know, people's biggest fear when they're traveling, some of the biggest fears, because I love to ask this question, I say to people, what is your biggest fear? And I want both the husband and the wife to share that with me. And sometimes that's the first time that actually gets voiced, if it's a couple. And you'd be surprised, you know, you have a couple sitting down and we're going to do this trip. But when I look at the wife and I say, what are your fears? And she voices it out, it's almost like, wow, we've actually now put it on the table.
It's therapy.
Well, yeah, I guess it is. I think it's communication as well. I think what we do is by asking those difficult questions, we're facing our truth. Okay, and I think well, for me, that is very important. If you're going to start out on any journey, be it an overland trip, be it living with someone, you need to ask those honest questions and face your truths properly, because if you don't, that foundation that you put down, okay, so let's take a couple who are going to go on an expedition, overland trip, and they're talking about all the good things they can do. That's great. So what haven't they discussed? They probably haven't discussed the what if something goes wrong. They probably also haven't discussed their fears, their concerns, and those, when those get put on the table and talked about, you now building that foundation of strength. So now that doesn't become an issue. It's not a distraction, it's not a concern. If we are going down the road of building a vehicle, churning in the back of my mind isn't this concern I've got because we've spoken about it. So actually my focus now comes properly. I'm now focused. So if it's a couple and they're not on the same page, it's really important. For me, it's critical. So I always say to people, if we're going to work, we're a team. It's the two of you, and if it's your children and it's me. And then it's the people who actually make and build the vehicles, and we become one big team. And together as the team, we've got to really look at see how do we actually all get ourselves onto the same page so we can move forward. It's like a river. You know, you imagine you see this river coming down a mountain, there's all these little tributaries coming down, and as it sort of flows into a funnel basically, and then you get this beautiful energy of a stream passing by, and you look at it and you think, wow, that river looks stunning. But it started out as lots of little tributaries. And very much the same way, you know, when you culminate an overland expedition and an idea, all these little rivulets of thoughts and processes come together, and the idea is you want to funnel them down so that they can become a powerful energy. And Jo has a great adage that she says, where energy flows, energy goes, you know. And it's so important if you put your energy out there in something. I've spoken about this before, and finding your dream is only one part of it. Realizing it is everything. How do I realize it? I focus my energy and time. Now we're not taught to do that.